The forest was unnervingly quiet as Daniel trudged through the thick undergrowth. His flashlight cut through the darkness, revealing gnarled trees and faint mist swirling at his feet. It wasn't his first time in the woods, but tonight felt different. His colony had sent him to search for the rumored energy source, one they desperately needed to survive. Without it, their future looked bleak. As he moved deeper into the forest, Daniel's steps faltered. A strange glow shimmered in the distance, pale blue and pulsing like a heartbeat. Curiosity pushed him forward, but unease tightened in his chest. He reached a clearing, and there it was, a structure unlike anything he'd seen before. The building seemed alive, its surface smooth and pulsating with light. The air around it felt charged, making his skin tingle. As he approached cautiously, the glow brightened, and the ground beneath him shifted. Suddenly, he froze, not because of fear, but because he couldn't move. "Do not be afraid, human. I am not a monster." The voice echoed in his mind, soft yet commanding. Daniel's eyes darted around until he spotted her. Emerging from the shadows was a tall, slender figure with glowing skin and eyes like molten silver. She was alien, unmistakably so, with sharp features and an aura that radiated both strength and fragility. Who are you?" Daniel stammered, struggling against the invisible force holding him. "I am Althea," she replied, her voice echoing both in his ears and his thoughts. "You should not be here." "I didn't mean to intrude," he said quickly, his mind racing. "I was just looking for—" "The energy source," Althea interrupted, her gaze piercing. "It belongs to me, to my people." Daniel's heart sank. So the rumors were true. But now he was trapped in front of an alien being who clearly didn't trust him. "We need it," he said, trying to sound brave. "My colony, we're running out of power. Without it, we won't survive." For a moment, Althea didn't respond. She studied him intently, as though searching his soul. The psychic grip loosened slightly, enough for him to breathe easier, but not enough to escape. "You speak of survival," she said slowly. "Yet your kind has taken much from this world." Daniel flinched. He couldn't deny that humans had exploited resources without care. "We've made mistakes," he admitted, "but we're trying to do better." Althea tilted her head, her expression softening. "Perhaps there is truth in your words, but I cannot let you take what you seek without understanding its cost." Her cryptic reply sent a chill down Daniel's spine. What cost? He had come here to save his people, but now he wondered if he had walked into something far more dangerous than he imagined. Before he could respond, Althea raised her hand, and the glowing structure behind her began to hum. "You will help me," she said firmly, her gaze locking onto his, "or neither of us will survive what is to come." Daniel's heart raced as Althea's words sank in. Her gaze didn't waver, and the strange hum from the glowing structure grew louder, vibrating through the air like a low, steady drumbeat. He wanted to argue, to demand answers, but something in her eyes, a mixture of desperation and resolve, stopped him. "What do you mean?" Daniel asked, his voice barely steady. "Why do you need my help?" Althea stepped closer, her glowing form casting faint light on his face. He could now see faint scars running along her arms, faintly etched patterns that looked like they had stories of their own. She spoke softly, but with urgency. "This artifact," she said, gesturing toward the glowing structure behind her, "is the last hope of my people. It holds immense energy, enough to revive what we've lost. But it is not something I can activate alone." Daniel frowned. "Why not? You clearly know more about it than I do. Why would you need me?" Althea hesitated, glancing at the artifact, as if searching for the right words. "The artifact responds to something your kind possesses," she admitted. "Your creativity. Humans have a unique way of seeing patterns, solving problems. My people were more logical, but logic cannot unlock its full potential." The compliment caught Daniel off guard. He was no genius, just a scavenger doing his best to survive. You're saying I have something your species doesn't? That seems hard to believe. Althea's expression hardened. Do not mistake my words for weakness. My people thrived for millennia without the need for such traits. But when we fell, it became clear that survival requires more than knowledge. Daniel sighed, the weight of her words pressing down on him. If what she said was true, he wasn't just here to take the artifact for his colony. He was part of something far bigger. So, what happens if I help you? He asked. Althea's gaze softened, and for a moment, she almost looked vulnerable. If we succeed, we can both survive. You will have the energy your people need, and I can restore what little remains of mine. But failure will destroy us both. The ground beneath Daniel's feet felt heavier. He had come here for a straightforward mission, not to be thrust into a life-or-death partnership with an alien woman who radiated both power and sorrow. And if I refuse? He asked, testing her resolve. Her eyes darkened, and the faint hum of the artifact became sharper, almost menacing. You will not refuse, she said simply. The artifact will not allow you to leave. It has chosen you. Daniel froze. Chosen him. He looked at the glowing structure, now pulsing brighter, as if alive and listening. A chill ran down his spine. Althea stepped back, folding her arms. Decide quickly, human. The longer we delay, the more unstable it becomes. If we wait too long, it will consume us both. Daniel swallowed hard. It seemed he didn't have a choice. Daniel stood frozen, the weight of Althea's words sinking in like a stone. He had no idea what was happening, but he knew one thing for sure. This wasn't just about survival anymore. This alien woman and the glowing artifact held the key to his colony's future, and perhaps to something even bigger. He had no choice but to trust her, for now. All right, he said, his voice steady despite the uncertainty swirling inside him. I'll help you, but you need to tell me everything. No more secrets. He met her gaze firmly, unwilling to show any hesitation. Althea nodded slowly, her eyes flickering with something unreadable. She looked almost relieved, as if a heavy burden had been lifted. But she didn't speak right away. Instead, she turned back toward the artifact, her fingers brushing against the air as though she could feel its energy. The artifact is old, older than you can imagine, Althea said, her voice barely a whisper. It was created by my people as a means of harnessing energy from the stars themselves. But over time, we lost the knowledge of how to control it. My people, once prosperous, are now few, and we are not what we used to be. Daniel watched her carefully. Her story was tragic, but he couldn't afford to be moved by it. He had a job to do, and he had to focus. And you think I can help? With my creativity? Althea turned to face him, her eyes locking onto his with an intensity that made his heart race. Yes, the artifact has been dormant for too long. It needs a human touch. It needs someone who can think beyond logic. Daniel didn't fully understand, but he was willing to give it a try. So, how do we start? Althea stepped forward, guiding him toward the artifact. As they approached, Daniel could feel a strange pull in the air, a magnetic force that seemed to reach out to him. His instincts screamed that he should be cautious, but curiosity pushed him forward. This, Althea said, her hand hovering over the artifact, is the core. It draws in energy from its surroundings, but it can't process it without the right input. The artifact needs to be unlocked, and only someone with the right mindset can do that. She gestured for Daniel to touch it. He hesitated, his fingers hovering inches above the surface. Feeling the pulse of energy coursing through the air, the moment his hand made contact, the artifact reacted. It flickered and hummed louder, as if recognizing him. I don't understand, Daniel muttered, staring at the artifact in awe. It's responding to you, Althea said, her voice filled with wonder. You have the spark it needs. Daniel didn't feel like he had done anything special, but the artifact's energy was undeniable. It pulsed around him, drawing him in. As if guided by instinct, Daniel pressed his palm harder against it, and the glowing structure shifted. The once still artifact began to come alive, the colors changing and flowing as it absorbed the energy around them. Althea stepped back, watching him with a mix of awe and something else, something like hope. "We're not out of danger yet," she warned him, her voice serious again. "This is just the beginning. We have to move quickly before it consumes everything." Daniel nodded, adrenaline surging through his veins. They were in this together now, whether he liked it or not. There was no turning back. The artifact continued to pulse with energy, its colors shifting like waves in the ocean. Daniel's hand still rested on it, the hum of its power vibrating through his bones. He could feel its ancient strength, yet it seemed to be reacting to him in a way he couldn't fully understand. Althea stood a few feet away, watching him carefully. Her expression was a mixture of hope and wariness. Daniel knew this wasn't just some simple task. There was more at play here than either of them realized. "Why didn't you tell me more about this earlier?" Daniel asked, his voice filled with frustration. "You said this artifact could save us, but you didn't explain how or why it needs me." Althea's eyes flickered, and she took a deep breath before speaking. "You've earned the truth now," she said quietly. "The artifact is not just a source of energy. It is a part of our history, a history that was destroyed." Daniel raised an eyebrow, intrigued despite his confusion. "Destroyed? What do you mean?" "The artifact was created by my people," Althea began, her voice distant, as if she was reliving painful memories. "We were a great civilization, spread across the stars. But we grew too focused on power. The artifact was meant to sustain us, but it became too powerful, too dangerous. My people tried to control it, but instead, it destroyed them. It nearly wiped us out completely." Daniel's heart sank. "So, it's cursed." Althea shook her head. "Not cursed, just misunderstood. My people lost the knowledge of how to control the artifact, and the energy it released consumed them. What's left of my people are scattered, barely surviving. The artifact's power should have been used to heal, to build, but it became a weapon instead, a weapon that turned on its creators." Daniel swallowed hard. He was starting to see the gravity of the situation. The artifact wasn't just a tool. It was a reminder of what happened when power was misused. A lesson his own species seemed to be learning too late. "So, you're saying if we use it wrong, it could destroy us too?" Daniel asked. "Yes," Althea replied. "But you can help me. You have the ability to unlock its potential, to guide its power in a way my people couldn't. You can help us avoid the same fate." Daniel thought about her words. He had never considered himself someone capable of such things. He was just a scavenger, a survivor. But there was something about this artifact, about Althea, that made him believe he could be more. "I'll do whatever it takes," he said, his voice steady now. "We can't let this happen again. Not to us." Althea's eyes softened, and for the first time, she gave him a small smile. "I knew you would understand. But be warned, Daniel, this is not just a test of your mind. The artifact will test your heart too." Daniel didn't know what she meant by that, but he was beginning to realize that this journey was about more than just survival. It was about redemption, both for Althea's people and for his own. He could only hope he was ready. The artifact hummed louder, its energy swirling around them as if responding to their shared determination. The road ahead was unclear, but one thing was certain. There was no turning back. The air was thick with tension as Daniel stood before the artifact, its energy flowing through the chamber like a living thing. The walls of the ancient ruin were cracked and worn, but they still held the echoes of the power that had once radiated from this place. Althea stood beside him, her eyes locked on the artifact, as if she could feel its pulse deep within her. "This is it," Althea said quietly, her voice almost reverent. "The chamber where my people once gathered. It's here that we sought to control the artifact's power. And it's here that we failed." Daniel felt a chill run down his spine as he absorbed her words. The chamber felt ancient, like a place where history had been written and then erased. The walls were covered in alien symbols, some faded, some still glowing faintly. The glow seemed to intensify the closer Daniel got to the artifact. "What exactly do we need to do?" Daniel asked, keeping his voice steady despite the overwhelming energy in the room. Althea's expression was a mixture of fear and determination. "We need to unlock the artifact's full potential. But to do that, you'll need to use your mind, your ability to think differently. My people failed because they relied too much on logic and order. The artifact requires something more." Daniel frowned, not fully understanding what she meant. He wasn't a scientist or an expert in alien technology. He was just a human with the will to survive. But Althea had already told him that it was his creativity, his way of thinking that the artifact responded to. It was the key. He reached out to touch the artifact once more. The moment his fingers made contact, a surge of energy shot through him, causing him to gasp. The artifact pulsed with a bright light, and for a moment, it felt like time had stopped. The air around him seemed to shimmer, and the symbols on the walls began to glow with an eerie intensity. Althea stepped back, her eyes wide. "It's reacting to you," she said, almost in awe. "You're getting closer." Daniel focused, trying to push aside the overwhelming sensations that threatened to drown him. He had to stay focused. He couldn't let the power overwhelm him. The room began to change. The symbols on the walls shifted, rearranging themselves in a pattern that Daniel instinctively recognized. It was a puzzle, but not one he had seen before. His mind raced, trying to make sense of it. His hands trembled as he traced the patterns in the air, but the more he concentrated, the clearer it became. Althea watched him closely, her breath shallow. "You can do it," she whispered, though there was a note of fear in her voice. "The artifact will test you. It won't make it easy." Daniel pressed on, trying to ignore the increasing intensity of the artifact's glow. The energy in the chamber seemed to reach a fever pitch, and Daniel felt like he was on the edge of something huge, something that could change everything. With one final push, the symbols clicked into place. The artifact hummed louder than ever before, and a brilliant flash of light filled the chamber. Daniel had done it. He had unlocked the artifact's power. But as the light faded, he realized that this was only the beginning. The artifact had been unlocked, but now they would have to face the consequences. The room was silent, the air thick with the weight of what had just happened. Althea looked at him with wide eyes, her face a mixture of shock and relief. "You did it, but there's still so much we don't understand. This is just the start." Daniel nodded, his heart pounding. He knew she was right. The road ahead was uncertain, but they had come this far together. Now, they would have to face whatever came next. Daniel stepped back from the artifact, his heart still racing from the surge of energy that had flooded the chamber. The room was quiet now, the hum of the artifact replaced by an eerie silence. He looked at Althea, who seemed just as shaken, though her expression was filled with a mixture of awe and wariness. "You did it," Althea said, her voice barely above a whisper. "You unlocked it. But now we have to be careful. This power, it's dangerous." Daniel nodded, trying to steady his breath. He had no idea what to expect, but the artifact had responded to him in a way that he still couldn't fully comprehend. He knew it wasn't over, not by a long shot. Before he could speak, the sound of footsteps echoed from the entrance of the chamber. Althea's body tensed, her eyes narrowing. Daniel turned toward the sound, his hand instinctively reaching for the weapon at his side. A group of humans appeared in the doorway, Daniel's own people, dressed in the rugged uniforms of scavengers. At their front stood Captain Rice, a man Daniel had once trusted, but who now looked more like a stranger than ever. "Daniel," Captain Rice called out, his voice hard. "We've been looking for you." Daniel's heart skipped a beat. He had been so focused on the artifact and Althea that he hadn't heard them approach. How had they found him? "What are you doing here?" Daniel asked, his voice sharp. "This is not your business." Reyes didn't flinch. "Everything that happens here is our business now. The colony needs the artifact, Daniel. We didn't come here to negotiate." He motioned to the others, who were armed and ready. "We came to take it." Althea stepped forward, her eyes glowing with the intensity of someone who had already suffered too much. "You will not take it," she said, her voice cold. "This power is not for your kind to control." Captain Reyes laughed, a harsh sound that echoed in the chamber. "You think we don't know what this is? We've been tracking you since you left. You may have unlocked it, but you can't stop us from taking it now." Daniel felt a surge of anger rise within him. He had trusted these people, had believed they were working toward the same goal. But now it was clear they had their own agenda. "No," Daniel said, stepping forward to stand between Althea and the scavengers. "You don't understand. The artifact is too dangerous. We can't just use it like this. If we do, we could all die." Reyes' face hardened, his eyes narrowing. "You've been missiled, Daniel. We're doing what's necessary to survive. You've seen the state of the colony. We need that power, and we'll take it, whether you agree or not." The air in the chamber seemed to grow heavier, the energy from the artifact swirling around them like an invisible storm. Althea's expression darkened, and Daniel could feel the tension building. "If you want the artifact," Althea said slowly, her voice filled with cold determination, "you'll have to go through me." Reyes took a step back, his hand resting on the weapon at his side. "So be it," he said quietly. Daniel realized, in that moment, that the battle wasn't just for the artifact. It was for control over the future of the colony, control over their fate. And now he was standing on the edge of a choice he hadn't expected to make. Would he fight for the people he once called family, or would he protect the power that had already begun to change him? The tension in the chamber was unbearable. The lines had been drawn. The real battle was about to begin. The room was charged with tension. Daniel stood between Althea and the group of scavengers, Captain Reyes leading them. The air hummed with the energy of the artifact, its light pulsing rhythmically, as if aware of the imminent conflict. Captain Reyes' eyes were cold, calculating. His hand hovered near the weapon at his side, ready to draw it at any moment. The others behind him were just as ready, their expressions hard and determined. Daniel could feel the weight of their stares, but he also felt something else, a growing unease. This wasn't the fight he had imagined when he set out on this journey. "You don't have to do this, Reyes," Daniel said, his voice steady but edged with urgency. "This is madness. If you take the artifact without understanding it, it will destroy you. We're all in danger if we use it the wrong way." Reyes sneered. "You've changed, Daniel. You've gone soft. This is about survival, nothing more. We need that power, and we're taking it." He signaled to his men, who began to spread out, positioning themselves to corner Daniel and Althea. Daniel's heart pounded in his chest. He couldn't let this happen, not like this. He had already seen what the artifact could do, felt its potential. It was a force beyond anything he could imagine, but it needed to be used with caution, with care. He could not, in good conscience, let Reyes and the scavengers misuse it. "You won't survive this," Daniel said, his voice firm. "You don't understand what you're dealing with. If you take it without knowing how to control it, it'll kill us all." Reyes took a step forward, his expression darkening. "Enough talk. We've made our decision." His hand went to his weapon. Althea moved quickly, stepping in front of Daniel, her eyes locked on Reyes. She wasn't just protecting herself. She was protecting the artifact. Daniel had seen her strength before, but now it was clear she would do anything to prevent the scavengers from taking it. "Stay back," Althea warned, her voice low and dangerous. "You will not touch it." For a brief moment, the two sides stood still, the tension unbearable. Daniel felt the weight of his choices pressing down on him. He could feel the artifact's power, its raw energy, thrumming beneath his fingertips. It was waiting for him to make a decision, his decision. Rice didn't wait for any more words. With a swift motion, he drew his weapon. The sound of it was sharp, cutting through the silence like a knife. In an instant, he fired. But before the shot could reach its target, Althea reacted. She raised her hand, her glowing skin pulsing with energy. The blast of energy from her hand deflected the shot, sending it harmlessly into the air. The force of the impact rattled the chamber, and the artifact flared with light, as if reacting to the violence. Rice and his men hesitated, shocked by the power that Althea had just displayed. But the brief moment of hesitation was all Daniel needed. "Stop," Daniel shouted, his voice rising above the chaos. "This has to end now. No more fighting." He knew he couldn't let this escalate further. If they fought, someone would die, and the artifact's power could destroy them all. The risk was too great. He stepped forward, placing himself between Althea and the scavengers. "This artifact is too dangerous to fall into the wrong hands," Daniel said, his voice steady. "I won't let you have it." Captain Rice glared at him, fury in his eyes. "Then you'll have to stop me." For a moment, the chamber fell silent again. Everyone was watching, waiting for the next move. Daniel knew that the choice he made in this moment would decide everything. Would he fight for his people, risking his life for the artifact, or would he stand with Althea and protect the future? There was no turning back. The lines had been drawn. The chamber was a battlefield now, both sides tense and ready to act. The artifact hummed louder, its pulse filling the room with a strange, unsettling rhythm. Daniel could feel it in his bones. Its power was undeniable, and it was growing stronger with every passing second. The air felt thick, charged with energy, as if the very walls were holding their breath. Captain Reyes' hand still gripped his weapon, but there was doubt in his eyes now. Althea had shown him just a glimpse of her power, and it had shaken him. The scavengers behind him seemed unsure, some of them looking to Reyes for guidance, others clearly unnerved by what they had witnessed. Daniel didn't know how much time they had before the artifact's power became too much to control. He stepped forward, keeping his eyes on Reyes. "This has to stop," Daniel said, his voice firm but calm. "We can't let this turn into a fight. It'll destroy us all. You saw what happened when Althea used her power. We don't know what this artifact can really do." Reyes narrowed his eyes, but there was no mistaking the flicker of hesitation in his expression. He glanced at the glowing structure in the center of the room, then back at Althea. "You think we're afraid of you." Reyes spat. "We're desperate. My people need that energy. We've been struggling for too long to survive." Daniel's heart twisted. He understood desperation. He had seen it in the faces of his fellow colonists, people willing to do anything to survive. But taking the artifact without understanding it wasn't the answer. If they used it recklessly, they would all be doomed. "Listen to me," Daniel said, his voice rising. "I'm trying to save you, Reyes. I don't want to fight you, but if you try to take this, I'll stop you. I'll stop all of you." For a moment, it seemed like Reyes might actually listen. He lowered his weapon slightly, his jaw tight. But then, as if the decision had already been made, he gestured to his men. "Get them," he ordered. Before Daniel could react, the room exploded into chaos. Reyes's men moved swiftly, surrounding Daniel and Althea. Daniel had no choice but to defend himself. He grabbed a nearby piece of metal from the floor and swung it at one of the scavengers, knocking him off balance. The sound of the struggle echoed off the stone walls, and Daniel fought with everything he had. But Althea was faster. With a wave of her hand, a wave of energy shot from her, sending two of the scavengers flying across the room. They crashed into the walls with a deafening thud, knocked out cold. Daniel felt the weight of the moment. Althea wasn't just protecting herself now. She was protecting him, and the artifact, with all the power at her disposal. But it wasn't enough. More scavengers closed in, and Daniel could feel the strain of the fight. In the midst of the struggle, Daniel felt something, an incredible surge of energy that seemed to come from the artifact itself. The light in the room intensified, blinding for a moment. It was as if the artifact had chosen its side, responding to the danger in the room. The walls began to shake, and cracks formed in the stone, as if the entire chamber was reacting to the tension. Althea gasped, stepping back. "We've gone too far," she whispered, her face pale with realization. "The artifact, it's unstable. If we don't stop now, it will destroy everything." Daniel didn't need any more warning. He reached out toward the artifact, his fingers trembling. It pulsed in response, as if it knew what was coming. The energy swirling around them grew stronger, almost overwhelming. But Daniel pushed forward, trying to focus on the task at hand. He closed his eyes, reaching for the power within the artifact, feeling its ancient force. It was like a storm, wild and untamable, but he could feel its potential, its need to be guided. With every ounce of concentration, he tried to direct its power, to calm it before it consumed them all. For a brief moment, everything went quiet. The energy that had been swirling around the room seemed to dissipate. The light from the artifact dimmed, and the shaking stopped. It was as if the artifact had listened to him, responding to his will. But even as the room fell into silence, Daniel knew the battle wasn't over. The power they had just unleashed had consequences, and they would have to face them together. The chamber was eerily still. The dust from the battle had settled, and the air felt heavy, charged with the aftermath of the energy that had surged through the room. Daniel's breath was slow and shallow, his heart still racing from the intensity of what had just happened. His hand hovered just inches from the artifact, the power within it still pulsing, but now under control, a steady hum rather than the chaotic thrumming it had been moments before. Althea stood beside him, her eyes wide with a mixture of awe and exhaustion. Her glowing skin had dimmed slightly, but she still radiated an otherworldly strength. She glanced at Daniel, as if seeing him in a new light, the fear that had once clouded her gaze now replaced with something softer, gratitude, perhaps, or maybe even respect. "You did it," she said, her voice a quiet whisper. "You calmed it." Daniel didn't respond at first. His mind was still trying to process everything that had happened. The battle with Rise, the artifact's overwhelming power, and the realization that he had been the one to stop it. He had never imagined that he would be the one to wield such power, let alone control it. He was just a scavenger, a man trying to survive. But in that moment, he had tapped into something greater than himself. "I didn't do it alone," he replied, finally turning to face her. "You helped me. Without you, I wouldn't have known how to use it." Althea gave him a small smile, but there was still a sadness in her eyes. "You had the strength inside you all along. I just showed you where to look." Daniel looked back at the artifact. It was now glowing gently, its once fierce light subdued to a soft pulse. It was still powerful, but the danger had passed. He knew now that the artifact could be used for good, but it had to be handled with care, with respect. Suddenly, the sound of footsteps broke the silence. Reyes, who had been knocked out during the struggle, began to stir. His eyes fluttered open, and for a moment he looked confused, disoriented. When he saw Daniel and Althea standing together, the anger from before returned to his face. "You!" Reyes growled, pushing himself up from the ground. "You think you can control it? This power was meant to be ours." Daniel stepped forward, his posture calm but firm. "It's not about control, Reyes. It's about understanding. The artifact can help us, but only if we treat it with respect. If we don't, it will destroy us all." Reyes glared at him, but there was a flicker of doubt in his eyes. He had seen the artifact's power firsthand, and he knew now that it was something far beyond his control. For the first time, he didn't look like a man with all the answers. He looked uncertain, even afraid. "Maybe you're right," Reyes muttered, his voice low. "Maybe I've been wrong." Daniel nodded slowly. It's not too late to make things right. We can still help the colony. Together. Reyes didn't speak for a long time, his eyes flicking between Daniel, Althea, and the artifact. Finally, he sighed, his shoulders slumping in defeat. I don't know if I can change, but maybe we can try. Althea stepped forward then, her voice soft but strong. You can, but it will take all of us working together. No one person can control the power of the artifact. We have to learn to use it as one. Daniel watched as Reyes nodded slowly, his expression conflicted but open. It was a start, a small one, but it was a start. As they stood there, the quiet hum of the artifact filled the room once again, but now it seemed peaceful, almost welcoming. They had survived the chaos, but the real challenge was just beginning. They had a new understanding now, a shared purpose, and together they would face whatever came next. The quiet was almost overwhelming after the chaos that had unfolded in the chamber. The artifact's gentle hum filled the space, steady and calm now, no longer the violent force it had once been. Daniel stood still, his eyes fixed on it. He had never imagined that he would be the one to hold so much power in his hands, but here he was, having unlocked a force that could change the course of history. And yet, he felt something more, something deeper than just the power itself. He felt responsibility. Althea stood beside him, her expression thoughtful. Her glowing skin had faded slightly, but there was still a quiet strength in her gaze. The battle had been hard, but it had also shown her something important, that humans, despite their flaws, had the capacity to change. She had seen it in Daniel's actions, in the way he had chosen to protect the artifact and its potential, rather than let it destroy them all. So, what now? Daniel finally asked, his voice low but filled with determination. He turned to face Althea, his heart racing. They had survived, yes, but they were far from finished. Althea glanced at him, her eyes softening. Now, we rebuild. We find a way to use the artifact's power for good, for both our people. Daniel nodded slowly, his gaze shifting to the artifact once more. There was still so much to understand, so much to learn about its true capabilities. But with Althea by his side, and with Reyes, who had now joined them, his earlier defiance replaced with reluctant acceptance, there was hope. For the first time in a long while, Daniel felt like they could make a difference. Reyes, who had been quiet for the past few minutes, finally spoke up. His voice was no longer filled with the anger that had driven him before. Now there was a weariness in it, but also something else. Perhaps regret, perhaps understanding. I was wrong, he admitted, his eyes meeting Daniel's. I let my desperation cloud my judgment. I wanted the artifact's power so badly that I couldn't see what it could do for us, if we used it the right way. Althea gave him a small, encouraging smile. It's never too late to change, Reyes. We all have a chance to do better. Reyes looked down for a moment, nodding slowly. I'll help. We'll all help. We can make things right. Daniel watched the exchange with a sense of relief. It wasn't easy, but change never was. They had all made mistakes. He had too. But now there was an opportunity to start fresh, to build something new, together. We'll need to be careful, Daniel said, his voice steady. We can't rush this. We need to understand the artifact fully before we make any decisions, but we'll do it together. We'll make sure it benefits everyone, not just one group or another. Althea stepped forward, her hand resting on the artifact. This power can heal, Daniel. It can save entire worlds, but it needs to be used wisely. We will teach others how to use it, so it doesn't destroy everything we've worked for. Daniel smiled at her, feeling a spark of hope deep within. The road ahead wouldn't be easy. There would be challenges, and perhaps more battles. But they had each other now, and together, they could face anything. The future was uncertain, but for the first time in a long while, it seemed bright. As the artifact's soft glow illuminated the chamber, Daniel knew that whatever happened next, they had already made the most important choice of all. They had chosen to work together, to learn, to grow, and to protect the future. And that, in the end, was what truly mattered.